India has recently abstained from voting on a resolution that supported humanitarian access to the Gaza Strip. Why did India do so? What has India given in explanation? What about the resolution? And why was this emergency meet called? We are going to talk about all that today. Also, why is there a deadlock in the UNSC? That will also be talked about from the perspective of UPSC GS mains paper second as well as the preliminary examination. It is important that you understand today's topic in depth. Okay, do not worry about notes because notes will be provided through my Telegram channel, that is by the name of Pooja Dwivedi UPSC. If you have any queries regarding this examination, you can also talk to me on my Instagram and follow me on my threads. So, this particular resolution has a name. It is named Protection of Civilians and Upholding Legal and Humanitarian Obligations. By the name of it, we are understanding in the Gaza Strip, due to the blockade that has been conducted by Israel, there is a very limited scope of providing humanitarian aid to this region. Limited humanitarian aid in short number of trucks is being provided through the Rafah crossing. Rafah crossing is a crossing through which the Gaza Strip shares a border with the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt. India has also sent humanitarian aid, so it is pretty perplexing as an outsider to understand why India is not in support of this particular resolution. This was a Jordanian drafted resolution and it was sponsored by countries, many Arabian countries, also Egypt, Oman, UAE, and Russia. 120 nations adopted it, voting in favor of it, 14 against it, and there were 45 that abstained. Other than India, Australia, Canada, Germany, Japan, Ukraine, and the UK, these abstained. That means they did not vote in favor or against this particular resolution. It because many analysts are believing because this resolution did not mention of the attacks that was conducted by Hamas. So when that happens, there is no name calling to the group that initiated it. This is being speculated by many analysts that this may be the reason why India abstained. US also expressed outrage at this omission. US was pretty upset that why was Hamas not named? Because when it all started, it was by the actions of Hamas. This is what US was saying. But before this resolution got adopted, there was a consensus among certain countries, including Canada, India, USA, that an amendment has to be made to the resolution that was being passed. This amendment provided a paragraph. An amendment proposed by Canada, it was co-sponsored by the US, that all the countries that were proposing it in the resolution unequivocally rejects and condemns the terrorist attacks by Hamas that took place in Israel starting on 7th October 2023, and the taking of hostages demands the safety, well-being and humane treatment of hostages and so on. So US and Canada were very adamant on the usage of the term Hamas and hostages because this was the beginning of the current conflict. This is what these countries were saying. So India voted in favor of this amendment and 87 other nations also voted in favor of this amendment. 55 member states voted against it and 23 abstained. And because of this issue, the amendment was not adopted because it failed to get the two-third majority of the members who were present and voting. Okay, moving on. Now, what does this particular resolution read? It is important for us to understand the constituents of the resolution as well. An immediate, durable and sustained humanitarian truce. Both the sides should come together and in a sustained manner, they should agree to certain terms and conditions for the sake of the civilians, leading to cessation of hostilities, immediate, continuous, sufficient and unhindered provision of essential goods and services to civilians. We are talking about civilians. At the end of the day, civilians are at the receiving of any sort of conflict. So it was a civilian oriented resolution. It is including but not limited to water, food, medical supplies, fuel and electricity. That means all the countries have agreed to that through special corridors, we are going to provide food, water, electricity and other resources as well to the civilians of the Gaza Strip. It has also called out Israel the occupying power in Gaza Strip as well as West Bank. Israel, the occupying power for Palestinian civilians and United Nations staff, as well as humanitarian and medical workers to evacuate all area in the Gaza Strip, north of Wadi Gaza, and relocate to the southern Gaza. Now, there are two things that we can take away from here. Maybe India did not vote in favor of this humanitarian aid resolution, maybe because of the absence of the term Hamas. And secondly, because of the usage of the word Israel as an occupying power, because it is not in India's interest to term any nation as an occupying power. We are always in favor of solving any issue bilaterally, diplomatically, and peacefully. Now, the Deputy Permanent Representative to the UN, India's Deputy Representative, Yojana Patel, has said in the explanation that casualties in the ongoing conflict in Gaza are telling serious and continuing concern for India. Civilians, especially women and children, are paying with their lives, it has been specifically said, but did not actually say why India had abstained. So this is all a speculation, what we are doing right now. India's representative chose not to name the organization as well. Hamas, according to our concerns, is not a terrorist organization. For India, it is not an immediate threat. Recently, we saw a news piece in which the Israel envoy was asking India to declare Hamas as a terrorist organization. But India does it under the UAPA Act. Under this act, in its origin within India, Hamas is not an immediate threat. That is why it is very complex in nature to declare Hamas as a terrorist organization for India. Although the terror attacks in Israel on 7th October were shocking and deserve condemnation, this has been said. That means we are agreeing that these were terror attacks. But we did not mention the name Hamas in this particular issue. The emergency session was called under the Uniting for Peace mandate because of the continuing deadlock in the United Nations Security Council. So it allows the 193-member General Assembly to take action when the UNSC is in gridlock due to veto powers. What is a veto power or a veto power, whatever you may want to call it? A veto power is an absolute power that is provided to all the permanent five members of the United Nations Security Council. If any country exercises this power, that means it is prohibiting for the resolution or any action to continue. Once any one of the five permanent members exercises veto, the resolution or the action becomes dead and it doesn't get adopted. And that is why India has been calling for a more reformed United Nations Security Council. Why to provide such an absolute power in such volatile times? So, Prime Minister, how is India walking the tightrope, diplomatic tightrope, because this is getting tighter and tighter for India? Prime Minister Narendra Modi, when it all began, the first terrorist attack from Palestine, specifically Gaza Strip we are talking about. When that happened, Prime Minister through tweet on X said that he is standing in solidarity with Israel. Later on, this was reiterated through a phone call when Prime Minister of India made a phone call to Benjamin Netanyahu. Later on, when we saw the Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital strike, we also were in touch with the President Mahmoud Abbas, who is the President of Palestine. So, we have been getting a conventional approach from India through the Prime Minister. But right now, we are walking on a diplomatic tightrope. Why is it getting tighter and tighter? Because the world is now divided into two blocks almost. One block is for Israel, another is for Palestine. But India has had a conventional approach for a two-way solution, for a two-nation solution. And India is doing that in a manifestation of the same. Also, we have had the traditional support for the Palestinian cause and the two-state solution. Prime Minister Modi this week had a conversation with Jordan's King Abdullah. And this was the first time ever when India referred to the need of an early solution to the humanitarian and security situation. This was for the first time. And we know that for a matter of fact, India is one of the largest developing countries that has not called for a ceasefire or any halt to hostilities. So you can take away these situations from the perspective of answer writing. India has always supported a negotiated two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine issue. This is what India says. Now, let's talk about the deadlock in the Security Council. First, we have to understand that each and every permanent member of the Security Council is vetoing each other's resolution. The United States, China, and Russia have employed their veto authority. On October 18, the USA vetoed a draft resolution that was tabled by Brazil and the UAE that called for a humanitarian pause, halted. A Russian draft failed to get the requisite number of 9 votes to be adopted. A second resolution was also drafted and put on the table, but that also failed. October 25th was when China and Russia vetoed a US-led draft resolution. So you see, every country has had their own agendas, and UNSC has become just a battleground for power play. Who is losing in the end? The civilians. Now, what is the infighting? Canadian permanent representative says that in the resolution, naming Hamas would be fair and factual. But Pakistan's envoy says, if you are going to name Hamas, please also name Israel. Israeli ambassador says that the UN doesn't hold even 1 ounce of legitimacy. The only way to destroy Hamas is to root them out. This is what Israel says. While US President Joe Biden says that how should we believe, why should we believe the number of casualty, that means the data what the UN is providing, how should we believe that? The UN says that there is credibility in the number of people who have died in this entire issue. The UN vouched for the credibility through the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza's statistics. Names and details of 6,747 people who have lost their lives in this conflict has been published by the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza, out of which 2,655 have been children. It's a pretty grim situation. The Israel has been conducting extensive airstrikes in Gaza as of October 27. These many casualties have been done. Limited amount of food and medical aid is reaching Gaza through the Rafah crossing. And right now, Israel forces are stepping up bombardment and make another incursion into Gaza. That means we need reformation in the United Nations Security Council. We need to understand that the world needs a guiding principle to be followed. War crimes should be defined permanently. Terrorism should be detailed permanently. Thank you so much for watching and stay updated.